Hey guys, so it's me, your teacher Hannah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be going through the cognitive approach with you today. We are going to try and make this remote learning as kind of easy as possible and as normal as possible for you guys. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to open up Google Meet as well. I've posted this PowerPoint on with the post with this video, but I'd like you to open up Google Meet as well. And if you've got any questions at all, you can be asking me while you're watching this video on that Google Meet during class time. So we're going to be starting with the cognitive approach. Now, if you open up your debates booklet, you will see the cognitive page looks a little bit something like this. If you pop onto there, we're going to go through kind of, first of all, the two studies. So the two studies in this area are Loftus and Palmer and Grant. They belong to the cognitive area. Now, that's because cognitive or cognition basically means thinking. Okay, so the thinking area, things to do with thinking. Now, Loftus and Palmer and Grant are the two studies that are in this area, and their key theme is memory. So just like we did with the other areas, we looked at Freud and Baron Cohen, their key theme being understanding disorders. We looked at Sperry and Casey, their key theme being regions of the brain. For Loftus and Palmer and Grant, their key theme is memory. So how the core studies link to the key theme, this is what we need to look at. So how does each of the core studies link to the key theme? To answer this question, you need to know how it links to the key theme and explain why. Give evidence or results from the study to support the key theme and link back to the question. So an example of how Loftus and Palmer may link to the key theme includes Loftus and Palmer links to the key theme of memory as she studies, yes, Loftus and Palmer is a woman, by the way, as she studies the effects of leading questions on memory and how memory can be considered unreliable and reconstructive. Loftus and Palmer, for example, found that when supplied with information after an event, that people actually change their memory of that event. For example, participants were given the word smashed in the critical question, which was how fast were the cars going when they somethinged into each other. They were more likely to estimate a higher speed than a word with a less violent schema, such as contacted. Loftus and Palmer concluded that eyewitness memory cannot be trusted, which is why she links the key theme of memory. So I've told you how Loftus and Palmer study. Oh, what have I done? How Loftus and Palmer's study links to the key theme by saying, it's because she's looking at memory and that's why it links to memory. And then what she actually found and then saying this is why she links to the key theme. So if you were to do that for Grant, you'd have to tell me again, how does the study link to the key theme of memory? So how does Grant link to memory? Grant links to the key theme memory, not regions of memory, what I wrote there. Grant links to the key theme memory as he looked at, what did he look at? So I want you guys to tell me, what did he look at? For example, he found, and then what did he find in relation to memory? Therefore, this is why he links to the key theme. So pause this video now, and I want you to actually have a go at answering that question. What you can do is if you completely don't understand, you can message me on Google Meet in the chat section, and I will try and help you out the best way I can. But how does he actually link to the key theme of memory? What sort of area of memory did he look at? What did he find in relation to that area? Or what did he find in relation to that area? And therefore, this is why he links to it. So pause the video, have a go, and then we'll have a look at whether the contemporary study changes our understanding. So pause now. Okay, so hopefully you paused and you've done how Grant changes our understanding. It'd be something very similar to the lines of Grant links to the key theme as he looked at context-dependent memory. For example, he found, and then tell me what he found in relation to context-dependent memory and kind of results of those in a context-dependent situation compared to those who weren't in a context similar situation. Therefore, this is why he links. So does it actually change our understanding, yes or no? So we've done this before. Does it actually change our understanding? Why? What did the contemporary study find? So what did Grant's study find in relation to the key theme with some evidence? Compared to what? What did the classical study find in relation to the key theme? It says, have a go yourself. Points include Grant changes our understanding of memory because his was about context-dependent memory and Loftus and Palmer was about reconstructive memory. So your first kind of red section, so does it change our understanding? You'd say Grant does change our understanding of the key theme of the, I'm just writing it guys as well, the key theme, because he found that memory was not just oh my gosh, these typos, was not just reconstructive, which is what Loftus and Palmer found, guys, reconstructive, but that memory was also context dependent. So that would actually be the red part of your answer. So just the beginning part. Let's change the colour of that. And then you guys, I want you to tell me why. What did Grant actually find in relation to the key theme with evidence compared to what did Loftus and Palmer find in relation to the key theme with evidence? So if you could add that to the end of there. So again, you can pause this video and pop that in to your booklets, please. Okay, and then we've got how does the study change our understanding of social, individual or cultural diversity? You have your OCR handouts that I gave you out in class, but it's also in your booklets itself. You can see in the booklet, if you scroll down, it tells us how the contemporary study changes our understanding of what we know about social, what we know about individuals, and what we know about culture. So for individual, we've got our understanding of how individuals behave due to increasingly detailed models of behavior that explain specific elements of memory processing and how memory can be improved or distorted. For example, Grant found that memory can actually be affected by recalling in similar places, whereas Loftus and Palmer found that memory is affected by other people. In terms of social, the accuracy of memory is a concern for society as the criminal justice system often relies on testimony of people. So does it change our understanding of what we know about society? Yes, it does. It's telling us that actually, can we actually trust society? Can we trust their memory? And for culture, I don't think it changes anything in terms of cultural differences because they were both kind of done in the same culture and therefore it doesn't really tell us anything more about culture. Okay. So we'll go through the assumptions of the cognitive area. So the cognitive area is basically also known as the thinking area, but we wouldn't like you to use those terms. It's called the cognitive area. And the assumptions or what cognitive psychologists believe about behavior include that they assume that all behavior is caused by internal mental thinking processes. Now, this is very, very important. So to know that the cognitive area assumes that all behavior is caused by internal mental thinking processes, such as things like memory, perception, and intelligence. And it's important to know these assumptions because you have to link the studies then to these assumptions. So they believe that all behavior is caused by internal mental thinking processes, such as memory, perception, and intelligence. They also believe that the mind is like a computer. This is usually called the information processor analogy or the computer analogy. So cognitive psychologists believe the mind is like a computer which inputs sensory information from the world, which means it inputs things through your sight, your smell, your touch, your taste, etc. It processes that and then it outputs a behavior. Just like when we type into a computer, we input something that we are typing. The computer then processes that in binary code, zeros and ones, and then it outputs something on the screen. We are the same in that we input sensory information, our brain processes it, and then we output a behavior. Therefore, according to the cognitive theories, any behavior is first preceded by thought, which means, first of all, we think first before we act. And cognitive abilities can be tested using highly controlled experiments. So they believe that you can actually test those cognitive abilities, such as memory, intelligence, and perception, through highly controlled experiments. And individuals can be asked about their internal thought processes using self-report methods. So those are the three assumptions of the cognitive area. Now, when looking at research to illustrate the cognitive area, the two pieces of research we're looking at are Loftus and Palmer and Grant, okay? So we've got to look at how Loftus and Palmer links to the cognitive area. Now, a little bit of information to help you out here is Loftus and Palmer use a highly controlled lab experiment to test how cognitive abilities of memory can be influenced by leading questions. Now, this one actually links to the assumption of we have to test it through highly controlled experiments. We've also got, they found that participants thought cars were travelling significantly faster if they were asked about the speed using the verb smashed rather than contacted. They concluded that memory is reconstructive, meaning that one individual remembers it a combination of both sensory information, such as sights and sounds, from an event, plus information received after an event, such as leading questions, that can actually alter a person's memory. Now, all of this, so this information about Loftus and Palmer's study, links to this idea that all human behavior is caused by internal mental thinking processes. So if you were to talk about how Loftus and Palmer's study links to the cognitive approach, this is the way that you would do it. So I'm going to create a box here, and we're going to have a little chat about how you would do that. So the first thing you do is you would outline an assumption. So one assumption of the cognitive area is that all behavior is a result of internal mental thinking processes such as memory. That's the first thing you do. You probably get about 1 mark for that. The next thing you do is outline how Loftus&Palmer links to this. So how? So Loftus&Palmer, please write this in your booklets, by the way. Loftus&Palmer links to the cognitive area as it studied memory and how memory is reconstructive. And then give me some evidence. That's your next thing. For example, Loftus&Palmer found that the mean estimate of speed for participants who were given the word smashed in the critical question in the study estimated a higher speed, and then it was about 40.8, wasn't it, compared to that were given a, what's the word, that was given a lesser extreme verb in the question, such as contacted, and I think they guessed, was it 31.8 for the mean speed? So there we go. So one assumption of the cognitive area is that all behaviour is a result of internal mental thinking processes, such as memory. Loftus&Palmer links to the cognitive area as it studied memory and how memory is reconstructive. For example, Loftus&Palmer found that the mean estimate of speed for participants who were given the word smashed in the critical question in the study estimated a higher speed of 40.8 compared to those that were given a lesser extreme verb in the question, such as contacted, with 31.8. Now, you would do the same thing for Grant, okay? So I'd like you to have a go at doing it for Grant. Here is the information that may help you out if you want to. But remember, it's one assumption, how Grant links to the assumption, and then some evidence from Grant to support that, okay? So what I would like you to do as well, guys, is when you write the answer for Grant, I would like you to pop that in a Google document. So I'm making an assignment on our Google Classroom, and I'd like you to upload what you have written for how Grant links to the cognitive area. Also have it in your booklets, but I'd like you to upload it on that Google assignment on the Google Doc, please, so that I can see it and I can double check those for you and give you some feedback on that. So I will pop a little feedback note on that as well. If you've got any questions, ask me in Google Meet, like I said. But if you could pause this video and have a go at how Grant links to the cognitive approach, and then once you have finished doing that, you can unpause and we'll move on to the next bit. Okay, so once you've paused and you've done that, hopefully you've uploaded it to Google Classroom. It's in the assignment section, and it's how Grant links to the cognitive area. That is the assignment that you should have submitted. So we move on to the strengths and weaknesses of the cognitive area. Now, our strengths and weaknesses, you have to copy these in, please. But we've got the strengths and weaknesses of the cognitive area. One of the strengths is that the cognitive area is very useful because it has real-world applications. For example, this is because the approach is concerned with how individuals think, and so by understanding how they think, then teachers could use this information to inform their teaching methods. For example, Grant et al. Tells us that individuals can remember better if the context at recall matches the encoding. Students could use this information to improve revision techniques, etc., and so on. So as I go through each strength, I'd like you to pause, copy it down, please, ask me any questions you may have in Google Meet, and then move on to the next one and do the same thing. So the next one is, a further strength is that the cognitive area tends to use highly controlled experiments. Now, you guys know I've always said use the word tends to, because you don't know how many studies actually relate to the cognitive area. And do they all use highly controlled experiments? Probably not. So For you guys, you can just put tends to use highly controlled experiments to test cognitive abilities such as memory. This allows researchers to establish cause and effect relationships, and it allows us to replicate findings as well. For example, Loftus and Palmer's used a lab experiment which shows that we could probably actually repeat Loftus and Palmer's experiment if we wanted to. Again, please write it down, pause and write it down. So the next one we've got is the weaknesses. So using highly controlled lab experiments, or tending to use, it should say, tending to use highly controlled lab experiments generally means that they research and the area lacks ecological validity. This means that the behaviour from the studies may not actually reflect real life behaviour and so would not be of much use. So basically it's lowering its usefulness. For example, Loftus and Palmer investigated eyewitness testimony. They weren't allowed to talk to each other. It wasn't the right amount of emotion as viewing a real life car accident because they saw it on video, so it's not really the same. So again, please pop this into your booklets, pause and pop it into your booklets. And the last weakness is a further problem with the cognitive approach is that it tends to be reductionist. Now, hopefully you guys remember what reductionism means, but it's this idea that actually, behavior can only be explained as being down to one thing generally or one kind of component. So for the cognitive area, they only believe that it's your thinking that affects your behavior and nothing else, just those internal mental processes that affect behavior. They don't look at biology and they don't look at upbringing. So a further problem with the cognitive area is that it's reductionist. This is because cognitive psychologists only study thought processes and so may ignore any biological or social influences on behavior. For example, rather than memory being context dependent, as suggested by Grant, it may be that there's some sort of biological reason as to why some people have better memory than others, but they didn't actually test that. Could it be down to their genes? We don't know. It's a reductionist area, and therefore that's a weakness because we can't actually find out the other reasons for their behaviour. So make sure you've got all of those strengths and weaknesses written into your booklets, and make sure you've done that little assignment for me, which is how Grant's study links to the cognitive approach. And once you've done that, and you've got everything copied and filled in, you can ask me any questions you may want to on Google Meet. But that is it, guys. I will see you in our next lesson. Goodbye.